Welcome to God is Open. I'm your host, Christopher Fisher. Today on God is Open, we're going to be doing something we've never done before. A brand new segment. It's called Defending Calvinism. We're going to be defending Calvinists today, especially in relation to this meme that is going around the internet, going around Facebook. You're seeing it pop up on all the little debate pages. Oh, Calvinists beat their wives because look at this new study. This new study says that Calvinists, they just see a woman and they just walk up to the woman and they just punch that woman in the face. And that's how it comes out on Facebook, you know. And a lot of these studies, it's so funny. So you'll go to Facebook and you'll see that those claims like that. Oh, Calvinism is domestic violence. Then they'll click into the link and it'll say, oh, Calvinists associate with domestic violence myths. And you click into it and it'll go to a new webpage and it'll get all watered down until you get to the original study. And the original study will be something completely different. And this happens all the time. People see something that reaffirms their priors. People will say, oh, I think Calvinists are psychotic, or they don't have empathy, or they're bad people. And they're bad people, as if anyone in modern American society is like, yeah, punching women, that's a good thing. And, so people see those studies or those little tidbits. And since those studies and tidbits reaffirm their priors, they'll latch onto that and then present it as if it's corroborating evidence for the beliefs that they already want to hold. But studies are very, you gotta be skeptical when you come across any study. My wife always hates sending me these studies, so she keeps sending me these things like, oh, this food causes this, and then you look into the data, and a lot of times it's like, well, it's not randomized trials. It's not like introducing a new element to a control group and then an experiment group and seeing what kind of outcomes come out of those two groups. Typically, these studies, to save money, they're just correlation studies where they take a sample of a group that already exists and they say, oh, this sample from this group, which has this characteristic, also shows this characteristic. Therefore, this causes this. Yeah, no, correlation doesn't equal causation. And we could, a good illustration about this is homeschooling. Homeschoolers beat the pants off of public schools and private schoolers in all standardized tests. Very smart kids. They are smart people. Now, why is this? Why do homeschoolers, and I was homeschooled till 5th grade. So I'm like intermediate. So maybe it's like I was homeschooled till 5th grade and then public schools till like 12th grade. I'm like a half and half. And that's why I score at the top of standardized tests. Maybe that's it. What is it? Like a 32 ACT. It was the homeschooling that really pushed me over the edge. No, that's not how these things work. It actually turns out that homeschoolers, what kind of parents homeschool their kids? Is it the parent who's just like, oh, I'm a low class and I'm not very smart. I got this dead end job and I'm going to homeschool my kid. No, it's usually like the wealthy suburbanite who's like, well, let's homeschool our kids. I'm worried about the education system, and I want to teach them a lot more stuff. I want to spin them up. Maybe it's a progressive liberal leftist that says, oh, I want to give them a very classic worldly education with a lot of travel and a lot of specialized, let's go study the ecosystem, stuff like that. Those are the people who want to homeschool their kids. They're self-selecting from the smarter distribution of intelligence in the United States. And intelligent people have intelligent kids. And that explains a lot of the effect. Smarter people homeschool their kids. It's not that homeschooling your kids is the smart decision. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the group self-selects. Just like that meme where it's, not all white people die in hot air balloon accidents. But all people who die in hot air balloon accidents are white people. You got a specific sample that you're sampling from. And so anything that you get out of this subsample is going to match the sample that it's being pulled out of. More about education. If you want a really good book on education, Brian Kaplan, he has a lecture and now a new book on the case against education, why education is a waste of time and money. And basically he argues that a lot of it, what we see in public schools and what we see in college educations and master's degrees and doctorates is more about signaling. It's a signal that filters out lower intellect individuals. And the more that you get degree inflation, the more people get degrees, the more signals that you need to bring to the market. That's why all these jobs are requiring more and more degrees as more people get the degrees because the signals aren't working as strongly. It's not like even in my experience, I got two majors, one in political science and one in computer science. And most of everything I learned on my own in private study, learning how to program, learning understanding computers, understanding politics, and one of my minors is in economics. Econ 101, that was actually pretty valuable. But a lot of economics that I learned is self-study from reading economics books, economic textbooks, economics volumes. Thomas Sowell, he's a good guy. Brian Kaplan, he's a good economist. A lot of podcasts and stuff like that, learning how the world works. So education, mainly signaling. It's not that, like, the education makes you more valuable or makes you more productive. Some fields maybe, technical fields maybe, where you're learning how to do something, like a machinist shop, where there's hands-on. But you can't tell me that these social science degrees or anything like that, these soft sciences, provide any extra value to those students. Oh, someone has a liberal arts degree, that makes them more productive somehow? I don't think so. Actually, the degree's acting in the marketplace as a filter to filter out it's an imperfect filter. So it's not like all people who are smart have degrees, and there can't be a degreeless not smart person. No, that's not how it works. It's an imperfect filter. It's an imperfect signal, but it's the one that Americans have bought into. It's the one we want to subsidize because we believe in it. But anyways, that's a tangential. So studies, don't believe them. I see them come across Facebook. I always cast a skeptical eye, even if they affirm my priors. I don't believe them. So I have pulled up on my screen a tragic quote by one of the leaders in the open theist movement, and I cut off his name. I'm not gonna post his name. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when people that you like and respect post things that you think are garbage, is fake news. Fake news is a good term to describe a lot of what I just don't like seeing. I don't like seeing it coming from people posting these unconfirmed things, or things from fake news sites, or misrepresentations of studies, as we see here. And he says, oh, look at this. Clark Pinnock once said that Calvinism contained a pathology. He is referring to the tendency to harshly denounce other theological views and work to expel people from their organizations. That part's true. This study does not confirm it. Now, a team of researchers in psychology investigated whether Calvinism fosters domestic violence. Oh, no. That's not what this proves. That's not what this study says. They found that American Calvinists tend to be intolerant of other views, and their religion is externally regulated, meaning is rule-based and strictly adheres to an authority. Is this what the study showed? It's not what the study showed. I found the study. It's not what it showed. Don't do this. Don't post this stuff. All right, but it's true that Calvinists have sometimes said things that put them on hot water. John Piper, do you have any thoughts on this issue?
Now, that's one kind of situation. Just a word on the other kind. If it's not requiring her to sin, but simply hurting her, then I think she endures verbal abuse for a season, and she endures perhaps being smacked one night, and then she seeks help from the church. I mean, every time I deal with somebody in this, I find the ultimate solution under God in the church. In other words,
fantastic. If someone's beating you, that's illegal. You could call the cops. That's fine. But one thing that's funny is men in America. I got the CDC report pulled up here. Men in America are abused more often by their partners than women. The CDC also says men were also more often the victims of psychological aggression. These violent harpy women that try to destroy you psychological, and control over sexual or reproductive health.
Hi, Wendy. My name is Kendra. How you doing?
Very well, Kendra. How can I help you?
So I've been married for 6 years, and me and my husband just had our first baby girl about 9 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So before we were married, he promised me we would have 2 kids, and now he doesn't want any more. My friends think I should trick him and stop taking my birth control. What do you think, Wendy?
I'm embarrassed to say this because I don't like spousal lying. However, men have never been in control of our bodies. We're the ones in control. I'm not going to suggest that you do that, but look into my eyes and tell me what I'm saying. Okay? He promised.
All right.
Wait, can I just take a quick poll? Clap if you think that she should trick him. My people.
Interesting. Those are facts about reality. And according to this study, holding these views, these factual views about reality that are actually true, mean that you accept domestic violence myths. And holding the views that the CDC study tells us, holding the numbers to be accurate, oh, you're accepting the myths of domestic violence, according to the study. So the study is off base and very biased. They've poisoned the well with their terminology, with what they're purporting to measure, and they're out of it. My friend said after I read him the study and I read him the methodology, he said this study should be renamed to "Calvinists Aren't Woke." And woke, if you're not familiar with that term, that refers to someone who buys into all these social justice causes that everyone's oppressed. There's racism everywhere. Those are the woke people, you know. And I could have told you that Calvinists aren't woke. I mean, that's not a secret. No one doesn't think that, and so this study is like water is wet. It's not something that's a secret. That Calvinists tend to be conservatives. That's what this study is actually showing us. So let's talk about the layers. The layers, real quick, are you'll see on Facebook people saying, "Oh, Calvinists beat their wives because this study says so." And then you'll go here, and this actually talks about how Calvinists. Here's their opening sentence. Think about this opening sentence. Who is writing this article? In June, Attorney Jeff Sessions decided that domestic violence is an inadequate grounds for granting asylum. This is what they're considering a data point for this domestic violence acceptance. If you don't believe that in some third world somewhere, that if some guy hits a woman, now that woman should not be granted citizenship of the United States, shipped to the United States, and naturalized as a natural U.S. citizen, apparently you are supporting domestic violence and accepting domestic violence myths. This guy's mentality, this article writer, that's what he thinks. Rich Barlow, you're a nut job. You're a nut job, Rich Barlow. Reading on. Citing these news stories, psychologist Stephen Sadich asks, how can people take positions that seem to minimize the problem of domestic violence? If you don't believe that people in third world countries who get hit by the husband shouldn't be granted immediate citizenship of the United States, oh, guess what? You are taking positions that minimize domestic violence. These people are lunatics. You're a lunatic, Stephen Sadich. You're a lunatic. It goes on. The Albert and Jesse Danielson Professor of Psychology of Religion and Theology and Research Director at BU's Danielson Institute, Sadich thinks he's found one answer outside of politics. Religion sometimes justifies or rationalizes violence against women. Oh, so here's his conclusion. Religion sometimes justifies or rationalizes violence against women. So it went from Calvinists are abusers, Calvinists beat the women on Facebook. The people are claiming Calvinists beat the women. To now it's Calvinists justify or rationalize violence against women. And apparently, to be included in this metric, all you have to do is believe that citizenship needs something a little bit more concrete than a couple punches from your husband in a third world country. If you believe in borders, I'm not saying I believe in borders or anything like that. If you believe in borders, you hate women. It's because you're sexist and you love domestic violence. If you want to build that wall, you like to beat the women. Sean Connery, do you have any good words on the subject to share with us?
You did an interview in which you said, it's not the worst thing to slap a woman now and then. As I remember, you said you don't do it with a clenched fist, it's better to do it with an open hand. Yeah, remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I didn't love that.
I haven't changed my opinion.
You haven't?
No, not at all.
You think it's good to slap a woman?
No, I don't think it's good.
You don't think it's bad, though?
I don't think it's that bad. I think that it depends entirely on the circumstances and if it merits it. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. A merit-based hitting system. I mean, I could go along with that. In one of my classes, it was a very diverse group of people, women, men, from all over the country, different races, and maybe even nationalities, maybe not, I don't know, represented. But we were talking about beating women one day, and my buddy sitting next to me, he's talking about how this very large woman came and started accusing him of something with her friend or something like that. And she just started pounding on him, just beating. And so he takes one punch, he steps back, one punch hits her in the face and knocks her straight out and down on the street, the concrete. And all the women in the class are all shocked. Oh, you should have just let that woman just beat on you. That's the mentality. And I'm sure this professor, this guy who's doing the study, and the writer of this article both think that men should just take beatings. And that's pretty actually common societal construct. And here's one of these social experiments where women are just beating on men in public, and they see if anyone reacts. And anytime that like a man beats on a woman in public, instant reaction from everyone around stopping that. But the reverse is not true.
Look at me. Stop.
Okay, all right. Don't
Look
hit.
at me.
All right.
What are you doing?
Okay.
My thought was, he looks a bit soft. I feel bad thinking that because it's a kind of macho view, but I thought he looks a bit soft letting him hit her like that. And I had the classic thing go through my head, I wouldn't let a girl hit me, and that's terrible because why do I think that? That's a kind of stereotypical view.
Right, so people don't care when men get abused. There's a famous interview where this guy is talking to the host about his sexual abuse by his girlfriend, how he's locking him up and he has to jump out a window, and the audience is laughing. And the host, he stops everything and he says, why are you guys laughing? You wouldn't be laughing if this was a lady giving this story. Complete double standard. And as we talked about in the CDC study, more men are abused than women are by their partners. Domestic violence is a thing against men more often than it is against women. But of course, holding that view, that statistically accurate view, means you accept domestic violence myths. And so you go from here and you click in and you eventually get to this study. And let's get to this study. Let's pull up this study. And the study is a miserable study in itself because it doesn't explain the questions that were asked in the study. It's gross. Here's from the abstract of the study. As such, we examined select Christian beliefs about divine human relating, hierarchical relational expectations, complementarian gender ideology, and existential defensiveness as predictors of domestic violence myth acceptance, using a sample of 238 students from a Protestant evangelical seminary. Great. So tell me what this domestic violence myth acceptance is and what kind of questions that you use so we can evaluate whether this is just not hogwash garbage that you're feeding us or if this is a legitimate study about accepting domestic violence, showing that people are likely to say, yeah, go ahead and beat women because beating women, that's okay to do. So we go through their actual study that no, they don't tell us any of the questions they asked these students to determine that these students accepted domestic violence or minimized the impact of domestic violence. Fantastic. So let's try to figure out what domestic violence myth acceptance is from previous studies, because the author of this study doesn't tell us. Fantastic. I'm sure you're an honest and trustworthy individual and not producing garbage studies. Oh, here's a new one from 2003. Maybe these guys will tell us. These are the original people who put together this matrix of 18 specific questions to tell everyone whether people in general accept domestic violence myths. Oh, here we go. All the way to Appendix I in the back of the study. We finally get to learn. Not on the front page, not on the people who are sharing this article. They don't tell us what this stuff is, what it's actually measuring. Not in the links that this paper is linked to. Not in the links to the links that this paper is mentioned in. Not in the paper. The paper doesn't explain what these domestic violence myth acceptance scale actually is. Oh, but a new paper that we have to dig up out of somewhere else. That's where we're going to get this information. It tells you a lot about the intellectual honesty of these people. It's destitute. Domestic violence does not affect many people. Apparently, the correct answer to this is yes. So if you say no, it doesn't, you don't have experience with domestic violence affecting very many people, oh, you're accepting domestic violence myths. When a man is violent is because he lost control of his temper. Apparently, answering yes is the wrong answer. Men are just apparently naturally violent or something like that. That's what they're trying to measure here. This is how absurd this is. If you believe that men's violence arise from their temper, or if you believe that the violence is an emotional reaction, or if you're justifying the violence based on a losing of self-control, then you're buying into domestic violence myth acceptance. The correct mentality is men just like to beat women. It's talking about how a man is violent. Remember, men are the more often the recipient of domestic violence. This is garbage. This is hot garbage about domestic violence. If a woman, look at these gender roles in all these questions, this is perpetuating. This gender myth acceptance scale is perpetuated on gender myths, that women are primarily the victims of domestic violence when it's the opposite, the exact opposite. If a woman continues living with a man who beat her, then it's her own fault if she's beating again. So if you believe that someone is like a victim of a crime and they are going back to the criminal and the criminal's re-abusing them, if you think that that individual bears any responsibility or should have taken a little bit of precautions, then if you believe that, then you are accepting domestic violence myths. No, this woman who's being violated apparently is not a free, rational agent. You need to consider her a doorknob that just like a robot that's forced and compelled to act and doesn't have any rational volition of her home. You can't treat her like a rational individual, or else you're accepting domestic violence myths. Notice how anti-woman that is. Notice how sexist that is, that women don't have the volition to change their circumstances. If you accept that women are as rational as men, then you accept domestic violence myths. Making a man jealous is asking for it. That's a pretty vague question. You're making a man jealous, asking for what? Like, is that the end of the question? Asking for it? What does it mean? A very vague question. Apparently, making a man jealous is asking for it. Maybe they interpret it as asking for a beating. If you make a man jealous, he can beat you. Like 0 people would answer yes to that question. So it's a vaguely worded question, and probably designed to trick people into answering yes. Asking for what? Asking for what? Domestic violence? 0 people are going to answer yes. Some women unconsciously want their partners to control them. There is a very famous comedy sketch routine by Louis C.K. where he's recounting his encounter with a woman, and afterwards he didn't have sleep with her or anything because she kept resisting. And afterwards he says, "What's up? I thought we were gonna, And she's like, "Yeah, I want you to rape me. That's what I wanted." And he's like, "I'm not gonna rape you on the off chance that you wanted me to rape you. That's a terrible idea." And so some women unconsciously want their partners to control them. So the correct answer to this is apparently no. That out of the millions of people, what is it, like 300 million people in the U.S., out of 150 million women, not a single one, not a handful of them unconsciously want their partners to control them. Right? Then you're accepting domestic violence myths if you think that. 6, a lot of domestic violence occurs because women keep on arguing about things with their partners. So if women can't be instigators. If you think women instigate, then you're accepting domestic violence myths. If a woman doesn't like it, she can, remember, women abuse men more than men abuse women. If a woman doesn't like it, she could leave. Accepting that women are rational, volitional creatures, accepting that women are equal to men, makes you a domestic violence myth acceptor. You need to view women as pawns in a game. Women don't have a volition of their own. You can't treat them like functional, rational individuals, or else you're accepting domestic violence myths. Most domestic violence involves mutual violence between parties. Most domestic violence involves women being able to beat on men without repercussion. And I've listened to plenty of stories of the cops showing up and arresting men for domestic violence when they were the ones being abused. They're the ones bleeding, and the woman gets to stay home. The woman gets the kids while the men go to jail. Very common. Abusive men lose control so much they don't know what they're doing. Sure, I guess. I don't know. I hate to say it, but if a woman stays with the man who abused her, she basically deserves what she gets. If you don't feel sorry, for people who go back to their abusers, oh, then apparently you're accepting domestic violence myths. Women are not volitional creatures, to this study's author. This study's author is very sexist. He has a very poor view of women. Women are not rational human beings. Women are just, you have to shelter them and coddle them, and they can't think and act on their own. They don't have independent volition. This is sexism. Believing in equality means you're accepting domestic violence. Domestic violence rarely happens in my neighborhood. If you don't think it happens in your neighborhood very often, you accept domestic violence myths. Women who flirt are asking for it. Asking for what? Women who flirt are asking to get punched. Flirt with who? With me? A woman flirts with me and I punch her in the face. No flirting with me. Maybe it's flirting with other guys. She's flirting with other guys, so her guy punches her, and she doesn't have volition to leave this abusive relationship. And this is their picture of the world. This is their picture of the world. And if you don't accept their picture of the world, guess what? You like punching women. You are a serial abuser if you don't accept their narrative. Women can avoid physical abuse if they give in occasionally. Give in occasionally to what? I don't know. I don't know what's good. Give in to an argument, like men argue with women and just start punching them. Many women have an unconscious wish to be dominated by their partners. Didn't we already go over this? Some women unconsciously want their partners to control them. Many women have an unconscious wish. So you're measuring the same thing and basically the same question. Fantastic. I'm glad you have this garbage study. You garbage people and garbage study. Domestic violence results from a momentary loss of temper. I don't know. What are these women thinking when they're abusing their partners? I don't have much sympathy for a battered woman who keeps going back to the abuser. If you don't have sympathy with someone who keeps returning to the guy who's just beating her up, then you're accepting domestic violence myths. You not only have to accept their narrative of the world, you also have to have sympathy and empathize and care about these people going back to you keep walking into the same wall over and over again, and I'm sitting here watching it. Now I have to have sympathy for you. It's like, oh, you keep hurting yourself over, and oh, there you do it. You did it again. Oh, yeah. I got to have empathy with you, or else I'm accepting the wall myths, the myths about the wall, because you keep walking into the wall and hurting yourself, and if I don't have sympathy with you, I'm accepting wall myths. Women instigate most family violence. Accepting CDC facts, accepting facts of reality, means you accept domestic violent myths. These people are unhinged. We're dealing with unhinged people. If a woman goes back to her abuser, how much is that due to something in her character? I don't know. What does this question mean? So there you have it. If you don't answer these questions in the woke social justice warrior way, if you care about facts and statistics, if you think women are rational creatures capable of acting on their own behalf, if you don't want to marginalize women as irrational, crazy people, then you accept domestic violence myths. Fantastic. I'm glad we've determined that Calvinists are rational people when it comes to social justice warrior talking points. Fantastic. So here's a problem with these studies. They're garbage studies to begin with. They're put out by ideologues who want to prove their little ideology rather than actually do real science, real statistics, understand real natural phenomena, and it's to further their social justice talking points. We just saw in the world of social sciences how all sorts of garbage papers can get published that are just made up on the spot. One of them was about dog rape in parks and stuff like that. And the idea of this prank was to put out all these garbage papers about social justice issues and see how many of them can be published. And they got a lot in peer-reviewed journals, a lot of garbage science, just talking nonsense, these talking points. So yeah, social science. A lot of the studies coming out of social science are just absolute junk. And go back to the original studies, and don't be sharing things on Facebook if you don't know what the actual study's saying. A lot of this is just garbage. Calvinists, I'm sorry you're being slandered. I'm sorry you're being slandered.